Summer blockbuster season is right around the corner, but there are some smaller movies that are already out that need your attention, and we'll tell you what they are right now. I'm Dan Murrell.
And I'm Roth Cornet, and like Dan was mentioning, Infinity War, that tidal wave is coming at us, but there are plenty of movies to see out there in addition to the Avengers. Let's talk about them.
Yes.
Let's make sure we don't miss these great gems.
Especially because a lot of these, if they haven't already, are going to be losing screens to not only Avengers, but all of the bigger movies that are going to be coming out. Your Deadpools, your Solos, there's going to be fewer screens to go around, so...
Catch them
when
these
while you can. Yes,
yeah.
And there are multiple ways that you can catch some of these, which we'll also talk about.
We will, and we'll start with one that is in theaters now. This is starring Joaquin Phoenix, and this is a thriller directed by Lynn Ramsey, who you guys may know from We Need to Talk About Kevin. This is You Were Never Really Here. And Dan, this is a beautifully rendered and told story that is absolutely torturous, but delightfully torturous to watch because it's such a good film, but it's so well constructed. I would point out particularly the sound design.
The sound design
is entirely, it hits you right in your amygdala and will make you feel a level of anxiety that is disquieting. But again, you will be in awe, I think, of the filmmaking.
When people ask how you can use different tricks of the trade to throw an audience off kilter, the sound design in this movie is incredible. It should be nominated for an Oscar, but it won't be because that's how it works. It'll be probably some of the movies that we just mentioned. And what it's exactly what it does. It throws you so off kilter. The first half of this movie is kind of like ticking up a roller coaster, and you just know something bad is going to happen, and it does. Many bad things happen, but the way that it ratchets that tension up largely through just kind of keeping you off, like there's hard cuts in the outside world and big blasts of noise come in, and you kind of start figuring out some of what I love about this movie is as much as what it does tell you about Joaquin Phoenix's character.
It does not.
Who is kind of a handyman for dirty jobs that need to be done. If there's you need to go get somebody, call this guy and he'll go get them for you. And I love what it doesn't tell you. You learn enough about him to understand pieces of his psyche, pieces of why he is the way that he is, but it doesn't explain it fully, and I like that. The same with the violence in this movie. There's not much, almost if any, graphic on-screen violence.
One particular shot.
There's some shots, but it cuts around it. You either don't see it or you see the aftermath of it. And again, that's almost more disquieting because you're imagining what happened, and that in many for me and for a lot of people is way more gruesome than them actually showing it, is leaving that to the imagination.
It allows you, so it puts you in the perspective of this man, and I will say that we could do a quick plot synopsis, but I almost don't want to because I went in there blank and I allowed the story to unfold, and I was glad that I did because at the beginning of the film I thought Joaquin Phoenix was one kind of character, and by the end of it I understood him far better, and I liked taking that journey, so I encourage you, if you can, to take that journey as well. And it's fragmented and it's off kilter because that's where he is.
Yeah.
He's a man he's in PTSD. He is in trauma. He is driven by his violence, but he is also driven to prevent violence.
Yeah.
And it is, look, this is an actor that pretty much at every performance you could say, this is one of his greatest yet, because he just delivers. He is so committed to the role.
Yeah.
And I think you will walk away both wishing that he had peace and hoping that there is a person of that level of integrity and strength of will in the world.
Yeah, and also, in the way that the particulars of the technical part of this film, for me with Joaquin Phoenix, with his performance, it's not just his vocalizations, and it is watch his physicality in this movie, because he is just a hulking, and he's not like, ripped and like he went to the gym and like he's actually kind of paunchy and out of shape, but the way that he walks, the way that he holds himself, he just seems like this battering ram of a human being that will just, like, he would just walk through the wall if a wall got in his way. And he's so menacing. And the way that he's able to do that without the kind of trick of, like, I'm going to go to the gym for 7 months and become this huge, like, it's all in how he carries himself and how he, and how they shoot him, the angles. It is such a great combination of factors. And I think it's an incredibly well put together movie just from every aspect. It's not for everybody.
No. It's not for anyone young.
Definitely not for anyone young. Definitely not for anyone who is particularly squeamish about kind of, violence, abuse, any of those kinds of things, because those are, number one, subtext that run through the whole thing, but also some fairly dramatic events that are around those themes. So, if you're particularly sensitive or squeamish moviegoer, maybe not for you. But at the same time, I think theatrically, I'm glad that I saw it in the theater because, again, I hate to harp on it, but the sound design is such a crucial part of this movie.
Oh, it really is. And this is one that I would recommend that you see in theaters. For as far as Joaquin Phoenix is concerned, I think his physicality is 100% born of character.
Yeah.
This is someone that had to learn to throw a punch very young and never stopped.
Yeah.
And so it is 100% muscle memory, second nature. And that speaks to him as an actor because that's not who he is as a person. That's who he is in this role. So Lynn Ramsey it is really one of the most impressive directors that we have working today. And it would be natural to think, when can she come take on X? Never. She's uncompromising.
Yeah.
She could never do that, and she would not be the artist that she is if she were having to fit into some kind of studio box. So as much as you wish a voice like that could be, that lens could lend itself to one of these larger films in a bigger budget, it would dilute the power that she has.
She couldn't, I don't think she could be as singularly just off-putting.
No,
and this is an off-putting movie, but not in a bad way. It's just that it's designed to be. And if you saw We Need to Talk About Kevin and you liked We Need to Talk About Kevin, then you're going to love this movie too, because it is very similar in the sense that it's just like this is a portrait of many disturbed people and how they bounce off of each other. And it's I believe it's going wider this weekend, right?
Yeah, so you should be able to see it. I hope near a theater near you. I hope you do get to see it in the theater. This really is one that, to Dan's point, is worth seeing in the theaters. And if you're a film fan, this is worth seeing full stop to just look at the skill and the craftsmanship of this film in every aspect, as you were saying. And this is one that I would say I 1,000% recommend.
Definitely.
This is one of the, I will also confess that when there's a certain level of tension that a movie can deliver, I can no longer sit. And I usually just go to the side and I start pacing as I watch it.
Okay.
And this was one of those movies I just couldn't be still in the seat for this one.
I definitely squirmed. I didn't have to physically remove myself, but I felt like doing it sometimes. For me, for the year so far, this is definitely in my top tier. So
Yeah,
100%
me too.
recommendation.
Let's talk about another one that's gotten some positive to mixed reviews, Chappaquiddick. This is about a very crucial chapter in American history in which Ted Kennedy, who was poised probably and being groomed to be a president one day, it was assumed that he would be and sort of take the Kennedy throne, did not, because of an accident in which he drove off a bridge and a young woman was killed.
Yeah.
And the strength of this movie, to me, is in the central performance.
Yeah, Jason Clarke is really good. And if you know what Ted Kennedy looked like, it's weird.
It
kind of embodies.
It is alarming.
I never thought that Jason Clarke looked anything like Ted Kennedy.
But
and then I'm watching this movie,
like
I'm like,
him.
oh my God, he does look like. But it's not just the look.
So they gave him, they put these things in his jaw to puff him out a little bit. I mean, it's not just the look. Yeah.
Right. But it is startling. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah. But what I liked about this movie, and I didn't love it. It's not, it's not up there with You Were Never Really Here, but I liked it. I'm a fan of historical drama. What I liked about it is that the movie didn't judge him either way, which I think sometimes with historical dramas, they pick their side. They say, I'm going to take the side where Ted Kennedy was in over his head and just completely overwhelmed and didn't know what he was doing. Or I'm going to take the side where this might have been a devious guy and he took some actions that are really hard to explain, and they had bad intent, and everyone around him had bad intent, and we're going to tell that story. And what I like is that this movie kind of presents the events straightforward. So the things that look bad, I think, aren't really explained away, and his good sides aren't kind of glorified, deified in a way. I think it was more of he was a complicated guy. This was a very complicated event, and I like that the movie didn't pick a side or pick a lens through which to view it other than as a character study.
We should say that in addition to Jason Clarke, Kate Mara plays Mary Jo Kopechne, who is the young woman that was a Kennedy insider, that had her own ambitions in politics, who was killed. And one of the things that I had been concerned about going in was, wow, they're just going to show this accident at the beginning and then she's just not even going to be a character. Not so. Certainly it's more his story, but they give her enough humanity that you're able to feel the weight and the loss. And you need to feel that sense of how the level of importance of what he did. He killed someone. Yeah. It was an accident, but he still killed someone. And it was through reckless behavior. Now, the way they humanize him to me was, I think he made terrible decisions, but it was happening so fast. He was drunk. He was in shock. And the way they humanized him really to me is in the relationship with his father, where it's very clear, even though you're an adult, you're a senator, you're poised to be president, like all of us, there's that part of you that's still a child and you just want to please your parents. But for him, it's so elevated because you're a Kennedy, right? You know,
and you're the last.
You're the last.
You're the last of the brothers remaining.
Yes.
And one of them was president. The other one was well on his way to becoming president. And up until this point, he was kind of the man who would be king. Well, obviously, he's going to be the president soon. And this idea of one quick mistake or whatever it was, again, they're not really, it's not this thing of just like Ted Kennedy got drunk and drove off a bridge, but it's also not like Ted Kennedy got distracted and drove off. They don't really fill in the blank and make the judgment. It's almost kind of like a case report and let you fill in those blanks. I love that it was focused on more of just like, it didn't matter necessarily the motivations behind what happened. It was the fact that you're not going to be president. In an instant. That's gone.
And what's very revealing about the character is that that's the first thing he says.
I'm not going to be president.
I'm not going to be president. Not, there's a young woman, she's our friend and she's dead, or she's stuck in a car. No, I'm not going to be president is the first thing that he says. And I think it's a story that really reveals the troubles around extreme ambition and entitlement, and the kind of life that one can lead to bring them to the belief that their life is more important than another one, and how everyone around them can validate that belief to the point that even a really good person might get very confused.
And a quick shout out
about what's right and wrong.
Exactly, and a quick shout out to a couple. I always love it when comedic actors get dramatic supporting performances. Two comedic actors, Ed Helms and Jim Gaffigan,
are the moral compass.
Are kind of the moral compass of this film, playing supporting roles, and I thought they were both pretty strong.
I thought they were as well. So again, like you, I think I liked this a little bit more than some of the critics, but I had also heard this story for years.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is one that you should check out, but you could, if you're sort of weighing your financial options, wait.
You could wait, and it's already losing screens. Yeah. I don't know how many it's going to be on this weekend, so it may even be that it's not near you anymore. But I that is something that I would recommend. Like once it pops up on Amazon or where Netflix, check it out. I think it's worth a watch.
I think it's worth a watch, certainly for that performance. Two other performances that I think are worth a watch are Borg versus McEnroe. Now, this is you a tennis fan?
I watch tennis the same way that I watch golf, in the sense that, like, if there's a big story happening, I'll switch over. I would watch the Masters when Tiger Woods played. I certainly watched Nadal and Federer in Wimbledon the year that they played that epic match that went on, till it was dark outside. And, like, I watched that whole thing. But I'm not a day-to-day fan of tennis, which was good because I actually didn't know how Borg versus McEnroe turned out.
Neither did I. And that's the crazy thing, because I actually grew up watching tennis, but this was a little before my time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know about this. I mean, I knew who John McEnroe is. And this is about the famous rivalry that he has with Bjorn Borg. It's far more Bjorn Borg's story than McEnroe's story. But again, this is on a theme, a lot about ambition and being driven by it to a point that is damaging to both your life, your personal relationships, not to the point of death. Although I swear, this movie, this final match, I was sitting there on the edge of my seat.
The final match is the last 30 minutes when you get to the match was, I thought, incredibly
Brilliant.
well staged and edited and told. My issues with the movie were previous to that.
Yeah.
Mainly because the movie, I thought, was far more interested in Borg than it was McEnroe.
I was more interested in Borg.
Well, I get, but the movie's telling you to be more. Like McEnroe, I think they gave just very light, the minimum amount of lip service to his story and his motivations, and it is skewed very heavily in favor of Borg, which is fine, but I think they needed to kind of pick either McEnroe as this kind of enigma that's the boss at the end, or we're going to tell the story of both of them. But I feel like they felt so invested in telling the story of Borg that they hit some of the themes over again, where there was a lot of stuff with McEnroe. There's one childhood flashback in particular that really, I think, kind of informs him that if they had delved into his story as much as Bjorn Borg's story, then at the end I would have felt more of a push-pull, whereas it seems like the movie by the end is kind
rooting
of
for
rooting for Borg, where
Yeah.
I think it would have been better to kind of pit these two, hear their stories, and this is this clash where the two of them meet. And I felt like by the time we got there, it was the Bjorn Borg movie, and McEnroe, and Shia LaBeouf I thought was great as John McEnroe.
He was. Can we just say Shia LaBeouf is a good actor? He is a good actor. Okay.
Yeah, but
He's
the
certainly
movie,
good in this.
the movie felt, leading up to the final match, I thought the movie felt its length a little bit, mainly because we kept on hammering these same things with Borg. He's a perfectionist. He's dedicated to being the best, and here's why, and here's another flashback to his childhood. And I felt like if they had been a little more even-handed and told both of their stories, that would have led even better to that culmination, which I thought was great.
So I feel like maybe the movie presumed that a modern audience would have heard more about John McEnroe over the years. And he has this reputation of, being this mighty brat who will throw a fit and has this massive temper. And I thought the interesting thing about the way the film was told is that it sets it up in the beginning that they are polar opposites. McEnroe is this hot-headed brat, and Bjorn Borg is this icy perfectionist who never falters. And what it does is it traces their trajectory, and it shows you they're actually exactly alike, but one has learned to repress his rage. And it aligns them in such a way that I didn't know enough about their story, which was great, so I was able to be surprised.
Yeah.
You understand how they bond in friendship because they are mirrors of each other. They are actually exact mirrors.
I guess that's the part that didn't hit as much home for me is I didn't feel like the movie really structured itself to really drive that point home enough without kind of shortcutting McEnroe's story. It seemed kind of forced, whereas I don't know. I think a better balance between the two would have made that a little more effective for me.
This isn't, and the other thing that's interesting about it is that largely throughout the film, it's not a traditional sports movie, but then at the end, to your point,
very much a traditional
it's
sports
very
movie.
much a traditional sports movie. I happen to love sports movies. That last half hour was both horrifically tense for me, not in the way that you never really hear is, and delightful because I was so invested in the match. But to your point, I was rooting for Borg. Yeah. I was rooting for Borg at that point. Let's talk about the endless.
Well, it should be noted that you can rent Borg versus McEnroe. It's in some theaters, but you can also get it on Amazon for, I think I rented it for like $6. So you can rent that. That's one that you can have a choice. It's probably not playing at a theater near you, but it is available now on Amazon if you want to watch it there.
Yes. Check it out if you like. Either way, I think if you don't want to go to the theater to watch this one, again, I would say you're fine to watch it at home. we will let you know when there's a movie that we're like, see it in theater. You're fine to watch at home. I think it's worth a look.
Definitely.
I think it's worth a look. So let's talk about The Endless. These are all independent films that premiered at festivals, but this one is probably the most indie in the indie.
Yeah.
It's like the two leads, they wrote it, directed starred in it. They produced
DP,
it.
visual effects. It's crazy.
It's one of those like DIY movies, really classic DIY independent film filmmaking here, which is always so impressive. Very clever premise.
Yeah.
Very strong performances.
Yeah.
And on that kind of budgets, I'm pretty impressed with the visuals as well.
For what the budget on this had to have been, they really got, maybe it's because they have to pay themselves that much to do everything else. I mean, there is a great supporting cast, but these two guys did so much of the work.
Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead are the two leads / directors.
While I enjoyed this movie on its own terms, and I think it does some great creepy stuff, and I love some of the set pieces, I love how they kind of set up this world and they explain it, but not so much that it stops the movie in its tracks. Like, you get an explanation, and then it's more the consequences of what happens once you find out what's happening in this place. They're at this cult thing, but is it a cult? And are they? It kind of unwinds this mystery, which I like. And I really like this movie more than anything. I can't wait to see what these guys do next.
Oh my God!
Because the inventiveness and the creativity that they brought to this concept. And I think if a studio sees this movie and doesn't go to these guys and say, what else you got? I think that they're dumb, because to see what these guys could do with the kind of creativity that they showed, with more resources and time, I think they could do something really spectacular. This, for me, it reminded me a little bit of Annihilation.
Yes.
In tone, and just the idea that you're in this creepy world and you have to figure your way out of it. Now, obviously, Annihilation had 100 times more resources than this movie did. But I was really taken aback. Now, I did feel like it was a bit slow. I felt like it felt its length a little bit, and they could have gotten to the twist of it a little bit quicker. The first half, I was starting to kind of feel
frustrated.
I was like, where are we going? Like where are we going? What's the road you're taking me down? But when we got there, I'm like, okay. And then the last half of it, I thought, was really well and kind of ratcheted up the tension. You introduced some new characters that kind of shed light onto it. But I love finding little movies like this.
Yeah.
And I really do think that these guys, if they have more ideas like this, we could be hearing a lot from them very soon.
I love movies like this because it reminded me of Annihilation as well in tone, but you know what it reminded me of in terms of how it was made was Shane Carruth's Primer, which won Sundance in 2004, was made for famously, I think, $7,000.
Something small,
like insane. And he did everything. And it's this great little sci-fi movie. You can see the budget, but it's this great little sci-fi movie, this really good idea that's very well executed. I suggest you go see that if you haven't. This has far more flash and flourish and visual effects in it. My actually only issue with this movie, because it opens up with one question about, is my perception or your perception accurate of our upbringing? Because we do not have the same perception. That's interesting for two siblings, because I know a lot of siblings have that. I have that with mine, where I see things one way and he sees it another, and we're both equally convinced. And you know what? We're both right. And then it goes to this other place, and this is where the horror element comes in. That there's an entity at play here, and something much bigger. The only issue, it's fascinating, and it works really well as a metaphor for how we create cycles in families and how we can eventually maybe break them or become their slave. But where it doesn't work just on a functional level is that it doesn't stick to its own internal logic. The entity doesn't behave the same in each situation. And I don't really want to talk. We'll talk about it after, because I don't want to say how.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Not here, because we don't want to
We don't want to spoil
it.
exactly.
But you see it, and let us know what you think in terms of that. I think this one, in terms of discovery of new talent and just that feeling of filmmaking at its purest, like this is a pure labor of love.
Oh, it is. It's you could tell. I mean, they wrote it, they directed it, they starred in it, they produced it. It's this kind of thing that you can tell. Who knows how long they spent developing this project? And well, you'll recognize Dwight from The Walking Dead.
Yes.
But I think as far as cast members go, that's probably.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's great that he got. That's a nice little splash for them and a little bit of like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I imagine this is the kind of movie that is probably going to get. Or if it isn't already, is going to get picked up by Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or so. Like I think it's something that could definitely be picked up by one of the services where you could check it out. It's so tiny. I just don't know how many theaters are going to show it.
Not many. This one will be unfortunately, will be harder to find.
Yeah.
So I hope that it becomes available at home. It is a little bit of a shame because I think it works on the big screen.
It does, yeah. I mean, in the weeks and months to come, please, and if we see where somewhere you can get it, we'll also recommend it. Look for this movie, The Endless, because it reminded me a little bit of The Invitation, which I saw on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great little micro horror movie.
Yeah.
And this movie also reminded me of that a little bit, in the sense that, like, if I watched this blind on Netflix one day, I'd be like, oh wow, that was really good.
And it's playing into those primal fears.
It is.
It really is. And it does it. It's so smartly constructed and well done. We'll talk about the little things that I think are maybe a logical flaw.
Okay. Find it if you can now, though.
Yeah.
If it's out there somewhere, because I would definitely recommend this movie.
I would definitely recommend this movie as well. There's another series. Now, this isn't a movie, but this did premiere at Sundance. It is a short series that's available on Netflix right now called Wild Wild Country. I gotta tell you, this is riveting stuff. You gotta watch this.
I'm 3 episodes in, and I'm just like, oh man! Like, Spencer was the first person I heard about this show from, and then I started watching it. I'm 3 in, and it is crazy bananas. Like, just the twists and turns that the story takes. You start out one place, and like I said, I'm just halfway through, and I can't believe how far we've come in 3 episodes. So I can only imagine how far this thing is going to get in 6.
This is about a guru, or he's so the way that it is perceived by the small town in Oregon that this community, this commune moves into, it's a cult.
Yeah.
Their perception is that they are not a cult.
Right.
And the movie opens up, and you're sort of like, well, I'm not sure which perception to believe, and you're almost on the side of, well, this seems very prejudicial towards this commune.
Yeah, they seem very close-minded toward these people. Yeah.
And then suddenly,
and then things change.
Things take a whole different turn. It features attempted murders. It features scandal and intrigue, political machinations. It features this very dynamic spokesperson for Sheila.
The star of the show.
The star of the show is absolutely Sheila, who really referencing all the way back is this picture of pure ambition.
Yeah.
And political machinations. And there's a line in it that I think is so brilliant, and maybe applies to some of the other things too, is be careful who you pick as your enemy, because that's who you become. And that's, I thought, was really the crux of what this was.
And it presents things very linearly, in the sense that they don't really hint at why these things are happening until you get to that point in the story where it's revealed. Like, there's one, I won't reveal why they're doing it, but the episode that I just watched, they kind of follow, because they're kind of like a free love, get back to the metaphysical state of, just like it's in yourself, and like we're just unlocking the potential inside yourself. It seems very, very hippy dippy, but nothing bad about it. And they go through this thing of like, they're building this huge commune, and they're like, so we started this initiative where we would go to different cities and we would pick up homeless people, and we would give them food and shelter and a place to stay, and work to unlock. And so you're watching this, and you're like, oh my God, like,
what
these
a great
people,
thing.
like these people in Oregon are trying to run these people out, and look at this outreach they're doing. They're taking thousands of people off the streets and giving them a place to live, and that's kind of how they're presenting it. And so I'm watching it at home, going like, That is so, like, how can you really be mad at? Yeah, maybe they're doing a few things here and there, but it seems like they're just kind of following the law and working inside the system. And then the reveal comes, and they reveal why they were doing that, and you're like, oh my God, they're evil.
And that's
the whole show.
Too.
But it's brilliant, but it's like brilliantly
but it's brilliantly evil.
And that's the whole show so far.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to finish it.
Wait till you get to the end of Sheila's story.
Oh, I can't imagine.
It's going to take a couple more twists and turns, even to the very end.
Yeah.
It is fascinating. So I can't.
Check it out,
this one, check it out. It's about 6 episodes, I think.
6 episodes. It's not a huge commitment.
It's not a huge commitment. It's well worth your time. Very, very, very well done documentary series. So that's it. Those are some things that you should not miss in the wake and the coming tidal wave that will be Infinity War. See Infinity War 3 times, and then on the 4th, see one of these other ones.
Or maybe just twice and see 2 of these.
Or just see it once and see 3
of these. There
it's
you go.
Up to you. It's up to you. But these are great films. Don't let them pass you by.
Yeah, no, check them out. Roth, I always love talking indie movies and telling people to go see these little ones that might run by under the radar. And if they're not playing near you, in the kind of climate that we have now, media climate, I'm sure there will be some way. So if they're not playing, just scribble a note, take a little note, and then check back in a couple weeks, couple months, and I bet you're going to be able to find it somewhere.
I hope so. I hope that Endless becomes available for sure.
I hope so too.
Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you soon with more movie reviews. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about.
Yeah.